Okay, everyone should hear us. Everyone should see us.
Hello.
At least I hope so. Okay, everyone should hear us. Wait a second. Yeah, like this. Yeah, everyone can see us, everyone can hear. Nice. So, let us talk about what today's stream about. We have special guests. We have guests from Paizo, James, creative director of Paizo, and Mark, director of brand strategy. Also with me today is my colleagues, Yulia and Lisa. Yulia, wave a hand.
Yay. Hello. Nice to see you.
Yeah, Yulia is a senior game designer for Pathfinder Wrath of Righteous, and Lisa is a community manager, as me. Maybe
Hi.
you remember who am I? My name is Alex, I'm a community manager too. Nice. I think we established that already. And what are we gonna talk about today? We're gonna talk about Pathfinder Wrath of Righteous because it's a new game, because it's a nice game, and we are trying to sell it, of course. That's why we're gonna talk about it a lot.
Doing pretty
And
well selling it too. It's spent its fair share of time there at the top of the charts, so that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Please keep buying our.
Buy multiple copies, gift them to your friends.
Well, the stream is over. Yes. Let's go, guys. Thank
Yeah,
you.
my job here is done. Yeah.
we did everything you wanted to. Yeah, we sold a few copies here, and we can go home. Um, and me, okay, Alex, and we're gonna talk about a Kingmaker, our first game, because again we have a special guest today, and tomorrow's is a birthday of the game. It was released it was released 25th of September 3 years ago. So we're gonna talk about Kingmaker 2.
2018.
2018. Yeah, sorry. Okay, and after all this stuff about who am I, who are our guests, and so on, we can start talking. The first thing is I wanted to talk about a piece from Paizo side of things. How do you create them? And Kingmaker and Wrath. What were you inspired by while you were creating these two APs? What themes do you want to explore, and so on, and so on, and so on. I think right now James have a more say in this, especially on maybe like on creative side of things. But Mark, if you have something to say, chime in without no problems.
Yeah, I mean, I'll defer to James on this one. He was the lead developer on both the original Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous adventure paths. So he's got far more insight into it than I do. I wasn't even at Paizo when Kingmaker came out, and Wrath I was busy doing other things. So James is the expert on those.
Okay, James.
Yeah,
Talk.
So for pretty much all the adventure paths we do, we try to find a central storyline and theme to carry them all through, and we try to vary them up between volumes, because the one that comes out, say, the start of the year might not be something you want to come out at the end of the year. So we listen to a lot of like customer feedback and all that. With Kingmaker, we'd heard a lot of people asking for sort of an open sandbox exploration type adventure. And so we really leaned in on that whole, hex crawling and exploring, building your own kingdom. These were things that were really, they're classic fantasy stories where you're like building up from nothing into the ruler of your kingdom. And we'd never really done anything like that in Pathfinder. So it was also very close to the start of the Pathfinder RPG. It was the second adventure path actually for the Pathfinder RPG. So we wanted to really kind of kick things off with a bang and do something that was never really been done before by us. So that was kind of the goal for Kingmaker. One of the actual things, and we'll get into this, I guess, later, but one of the things that, in retrospect, I think that people didn't know they wanted is they do like the long through line, the storyline that goes from start to end. And we didn't have a lot of that in Kingmaker because we were under the assumption people wanted to kind of do their own thing. So when you created the Kingmaker computer game, there was a lot of new storyline, this particular like with the themes of curses and stuff like that you added in, and I think that made it better than the original, which was really kind of it was sort of like it was a good chance to like go back and correct something I think that we missed out on the first time. So and then for Wrath of the Righteous, for me, Kingmaker was sort of a reaction to what people were asking for, and it was something I enjoyed working on, but it wasn't really something that I've been planning on doing from the start. With Wrath of the Righteous, I've always loved the fantasy trope of like the demons or the devils or whatever coming out of hell or the abyss, and they're kind of overrunning the world, and that whole storyline has been done all over. It's over and over. It's one of the more popular fantasy genres. So it's never something we've really done much in Pathfinder up at that point. But we had this place, the World Wound, which was set up for exactly that story. And one of the reasons it took a while for us to get there was because we wanted it to be the over-the-top superhero kind of story. And that meant having rules that go beyond what you could normally do. Because demon lords and these super powerful like witches and wizards and generals out there, they're meant to be characters that if you're just a normal Pathfinder character, you wouldn't have a chance against them. You need some sort of new source of power. And it took us a little bit to get to a point where we could produce these mythic rules is what we ended up calling them. And they're basically a way to superpower up your character alongside of their regular suite of powers they get by leveling up. And so once that started building, that was pretty chaotic between building the adventure path and the support books for it. And on the other side, there was another team, the design team, working on Mythic. And we didn't have a lot of time to talk back and forth because we were on a time crunch. So it was tough getting those things to sync together. But beyond that, one of the things I really wanted to explore with Wrath of the Righteous is not just the good guys storming in to save the bad guys, but the idea that who's good and who's bad is really sort of like it depends on time and location and all of that. The idea that good people could do awful things and that evil people could do good things. So there's certainly an element of like a whole rune doing these awful like witch hunt type things and betrayals, paladins falling, but that's something that kind of happens all the time in fantasy stories where the good guys fall from grace. And I really wanted to present characters in this one that went against the typecast thing. So leading off with a paladin who's also a half-orc, a woman, upends the whole idea of like the knight in the grizzled old knight in shining armor, white male human. We really wanted to kick it off with a really cool character who kind of inverted all of that stuff. Demons being redeemed from evil is another big theme.
Well, yeah, there's an interesting parallel with it of the whole idea of how demons take over places is through corruption. Like sure they invade, but they also corrupt from within. It's a very malignant, rotting type of invasion. And so there's the corruption side of good people being corrupted or the good land being corrupted. But then there's the reverse side of the redemption, characters who begin as evil, who through the actions of the PCs become good, including, some deities even start their journey toward redemption in this AP. And that's a really cool, I think RPGs are at their best when there's moral quandaries and it's not just you're evil, so I'm going to kill you, that gray area. And I think Wrath does a great job of playing with that.
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to do too was explore the idea of that corruption. So often people see like demons and they see chaotic and they think that they're just like these mindless forces of destruction. And that's not the way I see chaos at all. I see chaos as more subversive and sneaking in, and just the way that demons work is they're all based on mortal sins, and not just like the 7 deadly sins, but just ways that mortals, humans or elves or dwarves can kind of fail to support other humans, dwarves and elves and halflings and everybody, and just fall to temptation and evil. And using demons as kind of like personifications of wrath or and that's why we chose that title, Wrath of the Righteous. Wrath is one of the deadly sins, but it's also something that if it's used in moderation or focused, it isn't always destructive. So
Now,
it
Wrath of
was
the
a lot
Righteous
of fun to
wasn't
work on.
Wrath of the Righteous wasn't always the title for this AP, was it? I think we
It
had
was a
two different
yeah, we
APs
made a really good title.
that got renamed after we announced them. There was Skull and Shackles that was originally called um, Skull and Bones, I think. And
Yeah.
so someone on the message boards was like, it'd be cool if you called it Skull and Shackles, and we were like, yes, you're right. But Wrath of the Righteous, I really remember.
It
We
wasn't that
announced.
it got renamed. It was that we couldn't come up with a really good title for it that really snapped. And I crowdsourced it. I went to the message boards and I got all my Wrath of the Righteous things here. I'm trying to.
I want to say it was the user who uses the username Sir Oli Boli who came up with the name, but I could be wrong. It was over a decade ago.
It was one of our customers came up with the idea of Wrath of the Righteous, and so we gave him a little thank you on the first one and some of the stuff.
So this name, actually a member of the Pathfinder community came up with the name. That's so awesome.
Yeah, it's a
And
nice
that's
little fact.
really, yeah.
And
I mean,
just
one of the things that Wrath sort of came about because it was probably 2 or 3 APs earlier had done Skull and Shackles, which is our big pirate AP. And some of the character creation advice that we gave at the start of that AP was, you're pirates. This is not the AP to play a lawful good paladin in, because the story is going to expect you to do piracy, to steal, and in some cases murder, and do generally bad stuff. And we got a lot of feedback from the community, which was, but I want to play the good guy. Why are you going to make me play the morally questionable pirate? And so Wrath of the Righteous is in many ways sort of an answer to that, which was, okay, you want to be able to play the good guy. Here's the AP for you. And in many ways, it's hard to play an evil or chaotic character in Wrath of the Righteous because so much of the story assumes that you're a member of this lawful good crusade. So it's sort of the flip side of that, and that's sort of the ongoing dialogue that we have with our community, which is we release a story or an AP or whatever, and people say, that's great, we want more of this, or this is great, but we want something different. And then we're always adapting our plans based on what the community says they want more or less of.
But then we came up with Wrath of the Righteous CRPG and said players that they can actually play a demon or a lich. So I have a question. What were your feelings about that?
I real quick, I found the poster who came up with the title was named post under the name Kajahas. I have no idea if I'm saying that right, but so building off of that question about allowing all sorts of characters to play Wrath of the Righteous, even though we start out these adventure paths with ideas like you're going to be pirates in this one, or you're going to be crusaders in this one, or you're going to be circus performers in this one, we always have people that are eager to kind of flip that on the head. People played paladins in Skull and Shackles. There's Rise of the Rune Lords is very much anti-goblins are the bad guys in the first venture we had.
Players love to break all the DM's plans, right?
Yeah. And if you're a GM running that thing, you can turn those scripts on their head and fix things. So that's something we could lean on. But in a computer game, you don't have somebody doing that. So I think that the fact that you allow so many different options to play through the game in Wrath of the Righteous, I think it's great. I love it. I really, really, really love how. I've been playing it right now. I was up till 2 a.m. yesterday playing it. So, and just being able to just lean in on different types of play styles is so much fun, because really what it is the World Wound is like a world-ending event that is like started but then has been put on pause, and it's like just looming and could go bad and from bad to worse to at any second. And anybody on the planet should want to stop that, whether they're good or evil or lawful or chaotic or don't really care about. They still live on the planet, so they should want to stop it. So I really like how you guys went through and added all those different options. It's fun stuff.
Great to hear that.
I just have a personal question for you, James. You said you like the stories with when corruption is subtle, when it's not right in your face. What is your favorite example of this type of chaos in Wrath of the Righteous? Like, that written in AP, or maybe in the game if you want to. Like, whatever you whatever you liked more.
I think my favorite, one of the things with Wrath of the Righteous that I had to figure out was why the Abyss is infinitely, it's enormous. It's like multiple universes in size, and there's more demons in there than there are people on all the different worlds and all the different planets. So the idea of why wouldn't, if there's a hole in reality, why wouldn't just demons pour through constantly until they couldn't be stopped? Well, what's stopping them from finishing the job they started? And the thing that I hit upon was that the demons don't like to destroy worlds, because if the world is destroyed, there's nothing left to torment or torture or corrupt. So they kind of are like, I guess, gardeners, and rather than just swarm in and destroy everything, they poke a little bit of like their demonic fingertip through and just kind of stirred around in there a little bit, and then let humans do the rest of the job. So I think the subtle part there is that, you know, this whole crusade, the 5 crusades now have been going on for over 100 years, and had we humans not fallen to our own sort of bickering and all of that in this history, it would not have lasted that long. It would have, you know, been over much more quickly. So this subtle corruption of the worst enemy in this setup is your own, you know, temptation or desire, I think, is the part that really appealed to me. Like, it's not that you're fighting against demons, you're fighting against what the demons are doing to you. And it's a sort of a difficult thing to get across, but I think it came out in the end pretty well. As for like a specific example of corruption, I think one of my favorite subtle ones was the character of Nura Dundwar, who's this kind of happy little pleasant halfling woman who kind of joins your army on the second adventure, and she's awful. She's a terrible person, and just the idea that one of the worst people that you meet early on is this sort of, you know, cheerful little halfling woman, kind of it tickled me up. I like that a lot.
That's a recurring theme across Pathfinder too, is this idea that someone can be really happy and friendly and not be a good person. I mean, back in Curse of the Crimson Throne, there was Leori Vaus, who's who's a very bubbly, cheerful statist, worshiper of Zon Kuthon, and she just is like gleefully laughing while she, you know, stabs you with her spiky chain.
Those characters are fun to write. They're really, really difficult to illustrate, because when you do an illustration of a character, it's just one shot of them, and you want to carry across the fact that they're friendly and happy, but they're awful people, and it's a tough thing to, and a tough needle to thread, I guess.
Okay, great, and let's kick up with another question for our guests from Owlcat, from Yulia and Lisa. Both of them are worked on Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous. So maybe you can say to us why Owlcat, well, we choose to use a Kingmaker and then a Wrath of the Righteous to use it on our games, to maybe give it a new life, and so on and so on. Why Kingmaker, and then why Wrath of the Righteous? Let's start with Kingmaker.
Which you start?
Okay, or let's start with Kingmaker. So basically, the story behind Kingmaker is that we kind of knew that we wanted to make a Kingmaker. We really liked that adventure path, And one of the reasons was, well, there were several reasons. One of them actually was already mentioned when we discussed the Kingmaker, is that it has this sandbox type of events, the gameplay. So we really like that. It allowed a lot of freedom, allowed to add any side quests that we would like to add. And then we also
and make quite a lot of exploring.
Yes, exploration. And then there's also a nice opportunity to add the strategic layer with this kingdom building, with the and we really wanted it to do to
Yeah,
make something
because
like that.
we wanted to make a CRPG, a classical one,
But with a twist.
but yeah, we wanted to add some other interesting layers to that, not only some basic known RPG mechanics, but something
Yeah.
special.
King building is something that was kind of there in CRPGs, but the scale, the scope of king making, city building, and managing your barony and then kingdom was never explored to that depth in CRPGs, and we really loved that opportunity. And I think another point is that the story is not about the chosen one that you are granted with some kind of powers and it's only you, but it's more about a person that appeared to be in the right place in the right time. You have some kind of story. You just went along, and then as it unravels, there is something more and more. You have to take responsibility for something that initially you might not even plan. And this opportunity was also very interesting to explore, to focus not on the, as I said, chosen one, but more like on someone who can be more relatable to us, even though that we're playing
Some adventure game, like when
usually
when you start any tabletop game, you are just an adventurer, and then you suddenly get this chance to become.
And then you suddenly with a dragon, riding and killing everyone, corrupting souls for saving them.
Suddenly you are baron and the king then. So yeah.
If only in real life you just like appeared here, and then in several years you're just like, yeah, I have my own kingdom. With curses, obviously.
Yeah, it's mostly a story about a person that happened to be in the right place in the right time and that did like maybe 2 or 3 right things, and then he or she end up with a new kingdom to rule. And that's the idea we really liked back in the day. Well, not we, Owlcat, because me as a person, I was not with Owlcat at the time, but as I heard,
You should say we. You're
okay,
part of the team, so.
we like that.
Oh, I
Oh,
I
shit.
can claim credit for all sorts of things that Paizo did before I was at Paizo. We is one of the benefits that you get for working at a company, is to be able to claim everything that the company has ever done, for better or worse.
True.
Okay, and what's the story with Ross? Was it as easy to choose Ross as the next adventure pass to, I know you can to gaminize, or maybe there was some options?
Cool.
Well,
This tricky question.
yeah, because obviously not we have been doing this.
We.
Okay. For Wrath of the Righteous, because before starting to make this actual AP as a CRPG, we had some options. We've been discussing these options with Paizo. We were thinking about such APs as Iron Fang Invasion, but we wanted to make something whole different from the Kingmaker, and we decided this actual setting, this EP, looks a bit familiar. Then we were talking about War for the Crown, but again, we always wanted to add this strategic and different mechanical elements to our games, besides CRPGs, just as I said before. And we decided that this particular AP may not give all these opportunities for this. What was there? So
Then there was the Mask of the Mummy, which was obviously interesting, but again, similar case with the strategic. And then because it is a computer RPG games, we also wanted to give a lot of different visual details to show different environments. And Mask of the Mummy has less variety, let's say, in terms of the environment, the areas that the player, the setting more or less, the, not the abyss, I'm sorry, the, how do you call it? The
Whirlwind?
sand. No, the sand. How do you call
Oh,
it
the
in English?
desert.
Desert.
The desert. Yes.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
happens.
no, there's only so many ways you can illustrate sand. Endless sand.
Lots and
but
lots
you-
of sand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I recall those three options, and I think each one had something going for it. I mean, I think the
Of course.
Iron Fang Invasion is probably thematically the most similar to Kingmaker in that you are, it's relatively small geographical focus. But it had that sort of that idea that you're leading an army, and instead of leading a kingdom. But yeah, the terrain sure would have looked very similar to Kingmaker, and um, I think that that War for the Crown um, would have been very different in that so much of it takes place in cities, and there's that presents its own challenges in terms of how you make a city feel like a city. There's just so many assets you need to put into a city to make it feel alive, that you don't have to do if your encounters are taking place in the woods or in a dungeon.
We had to do this
eh,
Dresden, right?
yeah,
Some
yeah,
huge city.
yeah. And then like you said, the Mummy's Mask would have looked very different than Kingmaker because everything would have been in the desert. Um, but yeah, I think that in the end, Wrath of the Righteous was the right one to do. Next, it also I think gave you guys a lot more um, room to sort of explore the design space. Because of the whole
Sure.
mythic element, that was a rule set that we did. It supported this AP, and then we didn't really do that much more with it. I mean, it's anytime you have sort of a bolt-on rules subsystem, um, in terms of supporting that ongoing, it can be really difficult because you're basically requiring everyone who plays future products to have more of a buy-in and more stuff they have to do in order to be able to to own or to understand, to be able to just play this game. um, and so a computer game makes a great medium for something like that because it's all provided. It's all right there. You put down your money, you get the download code. There's the rule system. You don't have to worry about going and getting another rule set and learning it on top of the base Pathfinder system that you already know. And so you guys were really able to do a lot of the exploration of really where the empty spaces were in the Mythic rule set that we never got to explore because we only really worked on it for 6 months to a year's worth of products. Whereas, like the idea that your mythic paths are tied to specific alignments and outsiders or creature types um, is a really cool development that frankly, I mean, I think um, we would have benefited from having that type of variety in the system from the start. So it's always cool to see sort of where you guys take the component parts that we give you. Like, hey, here's this story and here's this mythic rule set. Do your thing, have fun. And what comes back is like way better than what we could have come up with on our own. So that collaboration and just sort of the project taking on a life of its own and becoming better than the sum of its parts is one of the most exciting things for me of seeing these adaptations come back as fully fleshed out video games from the bunch of words and pictures that we send you guys 2 or 3 years before the game comes out.
Thank
So
you.
great to hear that. I just want to add just a little bit about the setting before we jump right into discussing mythical paths and so. It also Wrath of the Righteous also gave us this great opportunities to make the scale of epicness larger, because after we ended Kingmaker, you're already a king and you just defeat spoilers. I haven't played it. You defeated like
Game's 3 years old. The spoiler period is over.
demigods. What can be bigger? What possibly can be? And then we get this story where the whole Galarian is in danger, and there are demons, and you may even become this semi-god yourself. So it really made us. It gave us this opportunity to make it bigger, make it better, make it more epic, which is also cool, I think.
And I want to add one thing why we chose Wrath of the Righteous as a second IP. Maybe I lost it and you listed it already, but we, as you said earlier, wanted to find some adventure path with some interesting feature that will continue to develop our role system in the second game. And mythic paths were like almost excellent for that, perfect, I would say, even, because without that, every addition it will be just hey, here's some new classes, here's some subclasses. This is good, right? But we
But what can we do? We can
what we can
put
do
in
better,
more and more
bigger.
classes. Of course, I know there are many players who would love that, but still.
So yeah, we wanted to do something interesting, something more, and we want to have, as it said, a killer feature. We want something like that, and Mythics were like almost perfect for this role, and that's why we went with. This is
Without
one of the
almost,
reasons.
they were perfect.
Okay, they were perfect. Okay, you're right. Okay, and don't you mind if I ask some questions from the chat?
Yeah.
Okay, James, I think this question is for you. Without going into spoilers about Anivia storyline, how did you go about making the character for the story back then? And considering the increased attention the theme has gotten in the last decade, do you feel happy with how it turned out and in the current game? It's a question from Ula is dead. Yeah, thanks, Ula.
Yep. For all the characters we do, for the really the big key characters that play specific roles in the game, we'll come up with we'll come up with the names and just kind of a basic outline for what their role in the story is, and then the tricky part there is to get the best author we can to write about it. And Amber Scott was always at the front of the line for me because she's so great at coming up with character backgrounds and motivations and stuff like that. And it's also the big thing there is that we want to have like a wide range of characters too. We want a diverse group of allies to join with or villains and all of that. Because one thing that we really try to do with Pathfinder is to make sure that the game is for as many people as possible, because it's not just, we're not making it just for ourselves, we're making it for everybody who wants to play this game. And it's really important for people to see in the game characters that represent them, whether it's their ethnicity or their sexual orientation or anything that can be a positive personal identification in the real world should be something that you can see in the games that you play, because they should welcome everybody as much as possible. So really the thing there is the idea that you want to include a wide range of people in your game is great, but you've got to find the right authors to bring that to life, because one single person is not going to be able to bring all of the dimensionality you need to characters. So, yeah, working with great authors, I guess, is my short answer.
Okay, and
Always
the question,
important.
and I think this question is for Yulia as for a game designer. And I don't think this question is right, but I will ask it anyway. Sure, says Phil PhD, I think. My question is, why level 10 spells for Angel and Leech didn't end up making into the Wrath of the Righteous? I really wanted
It's a
to
bug.
see.
It's just a bug. I've seen this question. The reason why Lich and I know, sorry to kind of guys, all
Okay,
our
okay,
viewers,
okay.
Lich and Angel level 10 spells didn't get into the game. I think it was a bug, and I think it should be dealt with. So it was not intended. Just like, yes.
How were
But
this game has only been out a few weeks. How are there
yeah,
people who are
guys.
already doing level 10 spells?
Oh, there are
Take
a
your
lot of
time, folks.
There are
Enjoy
already
it.
some. There
There's
are
no
already
rush.
some people
I'm only
who
one level away from level 10
ended the
spells
game.
with my.
I saw some people went through the game twice already, and they
Yeah.
are in the middle of their third playthrough on like chapter 4, I think, or chapter 3, I think. So yeah, some people, ooh,
I'd say
Definitely
that's
just
very
just
slow.
fast.
incredible.
Yeah. All right. All right.
A lot of mythic platforms.
And
You want to explore them all. Collect them.
just I think a question for Mark and James. What do you think about our original party members like Regil or some other companions that
Regil.
were
Our
Regil?
narrative designers say it's Regil.
Regil. Okay. What do you think about the characters that we wrote for the Wrath of the Righteous and Kingmaker? Maybe you have some favorite ones even?
I do.
Let's start with James.
I really, yeah. So we don't, when we're doing stories, we don't get to talk about like the main characters because those are the players, and so it's really difficult to come up with like those sorts of characters. And so we lean in hard on a lot of these NPCs that can come with you along the way because that's our way to tell stories. And Wrath of the Righteous specifically had like the inside covers would have a lot of these characters. Like here's a lot of the good guys that you can meet along the way, and we had like fake little like shields for the people you haven't met yet, and then the backside had like the villains that you would meet, and it would update as you went along. So like new things that they discovered and all that, and whether or not they betrayed you or allied with you is something that your characters get to decide on. And so more so even than Kingmaker, the idea that there's this wide cast of characters coming along with you is baked perfectly into Wrath of the Righteous, and in a fair number of the games we do. So when we were talking early on about Wrath of the Righteous, I mean, you could have just done all of the companion characters directly out of what we've done, and there's a couple you picked up along those, like Soziel and Cielo, of course, is our iconic paladin. But I think that the fact that you came up with most of them on your own makes the game more fun to me personally because it's new content that I don't know about. But it's also, more importantly, you can build these characters specifically in for the various storylines that you're telling, and it makes them much more organic and interesting. I think it also allows you to look at everything that's been published after Wrath of the Righteous and build characters that are even more set in the world. And a specific a specific example I have is sort of a spoiler to the game, but I'm going to say it anyway. Ember is my favorite character that she came up with. I just love how infectiously positive she is about everything, even though she's had such this horrible history. But the fact that she's just so happy really plays off well, like against Camilla, who's just awful person, but is still kind of, you can't help.
Camilla is a positive person too. Don't spoil too much.
Open your heart to me.
It's just like, am I useful? Sorry, I'm useful. Am I not?
Yeah,
exactly.
she's useful, she's positive, she has done nothing wrong, she's just a beautiful half-elf woman, nothing wrong.
So you've been
Yeah, but
talking
the thing with
about Camellia
the
or
thing is-
Ember too? I'm sorry, I didn't. I may
About
have
Ember.
misheard. Ember too, right?
Yeah. I think, but anyway, so the point I got to just last night, I was playing, and I got to the point near the middle of chapter 4, where Ember gets to basically sit down and talk with a very, very powerful character that I'm not going to spoil you, but people probably know. And this character, when we were working on Wrath of the Righteous, it's Nocticula, the demon lord of succubi and darkness and assassins and lust. In Wrath of the Righteous, she's bad. She's a bad person, but she's on the cusp of transforming into something else. And this is the place where we really started to want to tell. And that goes back to the redemption thing. Like, it's one thing if like a person goes bad or good, or an angel falls, but what happens if like a god or goddess changes their nature? And I didn't want to lean too hard into that storyline in Wrath of the Righteous because it's a big story. But I wanted to lay like little kind of hints in where we were going with that character. And Ember's interaction with Nocticula is super delightful. It was just like clapping the whole time. I just love how it was written, and that's the type of thing that we couldn't have done back then because we didn't have that whole thing plotted out. So yeah, I just really love just how the characters interact, and that goes all the way back to like Baldur's Gate and Torment and all of the games of this genre where there's banter between the characters and all that. Jade Regent has a lot of that with characters going with you, and it's something that I think, in particular, this type of computer game just is so great at doing, where it helps you to build your character by responding to these really cool new characters that are created for the game. Now that I've talked so much about Ember, I just like a Wendog is a character that we had in our adventure, and she's just someone you fight in the dungeon in the first adventure, and she's got this whole just the way that she's, again, not trying to spoil it, but the way that her allegiances kind of swap back and forth over and over and over again is super delightful. So yeah, very, very fun. I love it.
Are you okay with what we've done with Arushnil?
Oh yeah. Arushale?
No, Arushnil. The self from the start.
Yeah.
He has a difficult name. I may misspell it. This elf
Yeah, there's a lot.
with
Ereshkigal?
No.
this
The
elf
demon lord?
with whom you originally start the campaign.
Yes.
Aravashnil?
We're gonna
No.
find it.
Yeah, in the
Just
chat.
gotta look it up.
Aravashnil. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Oh yeah.
This one.
Are you
Okay.
okay
Yeah.
with what happened with him?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I am okay with that because you also made a change right at the start with, the pen and paper one starts out with Karamzadeh, this big demon Balor attacking the dragon, and you made changes there, and I think I'm fine with that because that broadcasts right from the start that this game is based on Wrath of the Righteous, but if you've played through it or run it or wrote it, in my case, this is a different story, and you're not going to be able to bank on your knowledge about what's going on, and there could be differences going along. And I think that first adventure where you fall into this chasm and you have to help these NPCs who are more powerful than you at the time, but they've got broken legs or they've been blinded or they're just bad attitudes like Horgus. The fact that you're the lower level characters, but you're the heroes because you step up to the job, I think is really cool. And Aravashnil's
Well, and you find the sword.
he doesn't end up coming with you, I think is a great sort of, it rips the rug out from under those people who are familiar with it.
It's just
says,
like
me,
storyteller partly took his place, I think.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
it
one of the
was
things that
it was a nice opportunity to make this cameo.
Yeah. And also,
I like to think that the storyteller is perhaps the narrator of the Owlcat, cinematic universe. Like
God damn it.
that the storyteller is while you, the player, are actually controlling what's going on. The idea that there's a person who he plays a much larger role in Kingmaker, but is there as an observer, and he collects stories, he collects these tales, and then he recounts them to others. That's really what the video game is. That, this is a story that is being recounted to you by your computer. Um, that that you learn things along the way, and you leave a different person than you were before you started the story. And that's sort of what the storyteller does, mechanically in the in Kingmaker, at least. I have not played enough Wrath yet to really be able to explore him in that. But yeah, like maybe he's the Watcher, who is just always present in the Owlcat universe, and is piecing it all together.
You should play the game, Mark. There's a lot going on with the storyteller that's really pretty cool.
Do you want to babysit?
I mean,
Do you want to babysit? Because I had a lot more time when Kingmaker came out than I have now with the 2-year-old. Is all I'm saying.
Sleeping. Just don't play the game.
Well, we cannot, of course, we cannot promise the storyteller will be presented in each and every of our games, but that's a really nice idea, like that.
And
we always can think that somewhere there,
everyone has their own
stories.
headcanon for what's going on.
And he's gathering these stories.
Mark, but who is your favorite character? Maybe you said you was not able to play Ross a lot, but still from Ross and Kingmaker.
Yeah, I've played like I'm about halfway through the second chapter of Wrath now. So for Kingmaker, yeah, no, it's a lot. I've met most of the characters at this point. I think I played the first 3 or 4 chapters of Kingmaker, maybe 5, 6, 7 times before the game came out, because I was doing beta testing and was just churning through it over and over and over again to try and find the little things that needed to be improved or that I'd like to see improved. But I haven't finished Kingmaker. I mean, I've read and approved all the scripts, so I know what happens in the game, which is sort of disappointing to be like,
I'm totally on your side here. That's totally what happened to me. I've written all the script because I've been helping as a technical editor to the narrative team, and I know it every single detail, but I never actually completed the game. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it turns out that when you're spending 40 hours a week doing the thing, that it's not relaxing to do on the weekend anyway. So, so that's the price of making games, is that the games you work on become much harder to play. But I really, I mean, I think that my favorite companion from Kingmaker is probably Octavia. Yeah, because she's so she sees the good in everything, and like she's romantically involved with a guy who's a pretty big asshole, and like despite being a slave to the Technic League, she's still like this optimist. She's just so cheery. So I really like her. In terms of characters that I enjoy having in my party, I wouldn't say that I would particularly get along with them, but Jubilost and Jathal, just because their inter-party banter is just so much fun, because they just hate everyone, and like Jubilost because he's better than everyone and he knows it and he's gonna let you know it, and Jathal because she's just like, she doesn't care. She doesn't like you. She's here for her own reasons. And just the snark, it's just so great. I just love having them there whenever I'm camping, to see what they're gonna say. So those are the ones that I really am drawn to the most. And
makes me
from that,
from Ember, because Nenyo is sort of in the Jubilost role in Wrath of the Righteous. She's like this super focused wizard scientist character, and I just love the way that she never bothers to learn anyone's names in the group. She's just like, you, paladin boy, demon girl, come over here and do an
Irrelevant
experiment.
information.
I mean, it's like a lot of gamers. Like how many players have you played with at the table who they do not remember the name of a single NPC, you know? And as the GM, you're like, I've got this list and here's my book of all the characters and all their connections, and they're just like that one guy that we met in that bar. And you're like, that person has a life of their own. They have an inner monologue, and you're just ignoring it.
Sometimes even difficult to remember the names of characters of your co-players. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you end up by calling them by their real names.
Exactly.
And what about Ross? Favorite character in Ross? At least for now.
Yeah, so far, I don't know. I mean, that's tough again because I don't, I haven't gone through the character arcs with them the same way that I did with Kingmaker. So, you know, a lot of the reason that I like the characters I do is both that I've spent more time with them for Kingmaker than I have with Wrath, but that also I've seen the characters grow, and I'm not yet far enough in Wrath that I've really been able to do that. So for me, it's mostly the characters that I already am familiar with. It's Sela, it's Lan, you know, the ones um, who at this early stage of the game, just being able to see them brought to life and fleshed out in a way that they're not on the page, it has just I just love every time I get to talk, you know, that Sela has a line of dialogue because I've been, you know, Sela has been on my computer screen thousands of times in the last decade. But she's always just an image without a story, without a voice, without character, you know, characterization. And so anytime I get to see that, especially when it's done as well as I think her character was written, that's always a pleasure. And Amiri was sort of the same way in Kingmaker. I feel like Amiri felt more like a caricature of a barbarian. You know, so much of what she's doing is I'm gonna kill, you know, let me destroy it. Um, whereas I think Sela's a little bit more of a nuanced character that's a little bit um, you know, that's also just their personalities. Amiri is not a subtle person. So it's it's just cool to see those. So that's where I am right now, but I could see myself I could see Regal being a favorite as I keep going. James, why are you laughing?
The character I'm playing is really going forward into the chaotic. I almost went through the trickster mythic path, but I ended up with Azada, and I just really love how cheerful and bright, and it's like doing things like turning parts of the abyss into like a beautiful garden and all that is just is a lot of fun. But I Regal is just kind of the opposite of everything my character wants to do because he's so lawful and rigid and no sense of humor. So and I'm very much more in the Arushale side of things, I guess.
But Regal seems to be the most, how to say that, reasonable in terms of managing the crusade.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that's what he's built. I mean he's built to
Also,
run to be in a very strict military organization, and you
He's
know
actually a good manager, and
yeah, that's great.
in my playthrough, I did
Maybe
have
a little evil
Sela
manager, but you know.
So yeah, in my game, Sela is the Hell Knight is the Hell Knight in the party. So
Whoa.
Sela.
there's some weird sort of with dialogue built in because obviously she's not supposed to be a Hell Knight. But that's one of the things I really like about just building the characters, just so many options and stuff like that. I can tell that I'm going to like a game because it takes me hours to make the characters and make all the decisions on how they're going to level up and all of that. So
Okay, let us take a pause, I think, for like 5 minutes, refill our water, and then come back for a second part of the stream. Don't you think?
Yep.
Okay,
cool.
let's do this. And we are back. Let us bring you all back to speed with what we are doing today. We have a guest from Paizo. It's James, creative director of Paizo, and Mark, director of brand strategy, again in Paizo, and people from Owlcat. Yulia, wave your hand. She's a senior game designer, so if you want to ask some questions about game design or some mechanics, she's the best person to answer those. Lisa, my colleague, she's also community manager, and I'm Alex, a community manager and kinda host of all this thing. So let us continue. We stopped on the point when we were talking about favorite characters from the two games of ours, but we asked only James and Mark. Lisa and Yulia, what about you? Who is your favorite characters in Kingmaker and in Wrath? Let's start with Lisa.
This question always frustrates me, actually, because
Why?
I can speak probably about everybody or nearly everybody. And I hardly can select one of them. So um, this always frustrates me. But probably while we have already talked about Fragile, who is awesome, Amber, Camellia, who's have we already discussed, we should also mention, well, not quite a companion, but still a character. Uh, Ivo. I think James might understand me as he is playing as a Zata. First of all, the whole idea that you can actually get yourself a pet or a child or companion dragon is huge. And she also has really nice personality, really like this talkative little child, so nice, so good, like loving cookies, so adorable. So
Chasing her tail.
Who doesn't love cookies?
for today, I will select her, I think. But for today, because it's always so hard for me to select among our characters. I actually love them so much, and I actually love the work our narrative designers do. And I totally will get this information that James likes Ember to Arsenic Krimov, who created her. I think he will be happy. So what about you?
Okay, in Kingmaker, I really loved Jitho because she was undead. Like, guys, that's a major plus
So
for
you're
any
playing
person.
you're playing a lich through Wrath, aren't you?
No, actually, but I wanted to play a lich initially, but then at some point I just everything went not as I planned. I was very angry, and I decided that demon is a pass for me because I was just like, I don't like you. I'm not going to help you. Just deal with your own stuff. I'm leaving this tavern. I'm not defending this defender's hut. I just left. And I'm planning to then go to this worm that walks. I'm not sure that I will be able to play as evil as it is, because
As it takes.
it is a challenging playthrough in terms of sticking with the play and role playing, actually. But I really like that idea. And in Kingmaker, I really like. I love Regal and I like Darren because like here's a romance option. Who doesn't like romances? So yeah, I would say that those are my favorite characters in Kingmaker and Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous.
Yeah, as I said in the chat, Yulia is again showing us that she's our evil demon leech queen overlord, something like that. So
True.
yeah, and let us move to another big block of questions. to our Paizo guests. I think it's an interesting thing to shed a light on how we work with you, like how all this process of cooperations looks like. Maybe what choices do you approve from us, and what not? What did you bend? Maybe what kind of maybe story plots or design? I don't know, design things you thought was, I don't know, not good enough, or maybe wanted to change. What you decided to change in at the end of the day, and what was changed in the game because of your guidance and something like that. Maybe if you think you can help us with I don't know, shedding the light on how this process worked.
I can talk a little bit
Um,
about
okay.
that. Yeah, and I'll cede the mic to you when I'm done, James. You know, we certainly had a lot more of a hands-on approach with Kingmaker than we have with Wrath. In part because it was the first game that we were making with Owlcat, and so we didn't yet have trust is the wrong word, but we didn't have the confidence necessarily that that we could leave our baby in the care of this other company on the other side of the world, and that they would take care of the baby. Um, and uh, and so I was a lot more involved with going through, you know, lines and lines and lines of dialogue and really nitpicking here and there. And ultimately, it drove me crazy. And I never slept for like a month and a half and realized that I was probably going overboard. Um, so we didn't do that level of detail in terms of approval and back and forth with Wrath. Um, Kingmaker really showed that that Alcat understands our world, understands our setting and our game, and that we can sort of uh, be less helicopter parents with the games. So largely, what we're approving are major alterations to the plot. So we went over a pretty detailed overview of the changes to the Mythic system from Pathfinder, or from the tabletop game to the CRPG, um, uh, just to make sure that you guys weren't going to do a ton of work building this system and narratives around it, and then have us say that's not how Mythic works. Go back to square one. Um, so we did that, and then we approve all the companions, both their concept as well as their general plot arc. And a lot of times that's just a I don't know, single page Word doc or an email that we get that's just like, hey, here are three characters that we want to get your sign off on, and we sort of go back and forth and say, hey, it might be a cool idea to have this character worship this god instead, or have you considered this other thing that maybe you're not aware of in this setting that would fit really well with this theme, or what have you. So there's a little bit of back and forth there, and then we largely let Alcat do the job. We approve all of the character portraits. We approve concept art for monsters and settings and things like that. Um, but by and large, we've already sort of said what Wrath of the Righteous is by publishing, a 64-page World Wound guide and 696-page adventures on it. And so, in terms of adapting that content, um, we sort of leave that to Owlcat. Um, One of the bigger things that we definitely take a more hands-on approach is community created content. Both games were kickstarted, and at various pledge levels, members of the community got to create an NPC or a magic item or a spell or a plot or whatever. Um, and those we tend to be a little bit more hands-on with, in part because a lot of these people, um, th- th- I don't know, James, can you tend to do more of that because it's more of a creative
Yeah.
director task. Talk a little bit about that process and why it is that we that we're a little bit more involved with that than we might be with something created in-house by Owlcat.
Certainly. It's on the approval side of things. It's really, to first all double down on what you said. It's the combination of trust and just you guys, what you're doing, and you've proven it with Kingmaker that you know how to present this information. And I think the best proof of that is the biggest back and forth that I had with you was like what shape Camila's ear is.
I remember that one.
Yeah, so that was like the biggest back and forth. Like, is it pointed? How long is it? Is it even visible? Is all this
What
different
about
stuff?
hair covering the
Yeah.
ear and so
Yeah,
on?
and the end result I think is really cool. But that's like the biggest kind of back and forth I think we had over the your content.
But
And
that's
for the
like
most part,
artistic search, I think.
Yeah,
Mostly.
yeah. For the fan the Kickstarter backer created content, it's a little trickier because they don't have the insight into the setting that we at Paizo, your Owlcat have, as spending years just delving into this and knowing all of the little intricacies and stuff like that. And beyond that, there's this element that this is Pathfinder, and it certainly has grown out of the tradition of Dungeons and Dragons, but it's a very different game than Dungeons and Dragons. And there are certain things that people love from D&D, myself included, that we can't actually do in Pathfinder. So there's a certain element of like we have to well, you can't use this character because that's a copyrighted character from Dungeons and Dragons. We have to shift gears into this different storyline here. But also there's this element of a lot of things that we see show up in this type of thing is just characters want to introducing their own characters from their own campaigns into a storyline, and that can be really kind of tricky because the way your game plays out may not be the way someone else's game plays out. And I know we at Paizo have been really cognizant of that, and obviously at Owlcat you just do all sorts of things to make sure that different endings can happen, different storylines can happen, and a lot of when it's one person coming with a storyline, they really aren't used to the collaborative type of effort that is required to this is a cool storyline for this one specific type of character, but it has to work for multiple different characters, so there needs to be changes. So it really kind of boils down to, and I think in a lot of cases, that it's just the experience of playing a game and running a game is very different from creating a game, and it needs more collaboration between those things. So I think in the end, the end result is really cool, but it's just harder to get there when it's.
Yeah, for example, there are characters from D&D that are based on real world mythology. For example, Tiamat is from Mesopotamian mythology, but the D&D personification of Tiamat as a 5-headed dragon queen, with the five chromatic dragon heads, like that is 100% a creation of Gary Gygax. That is owned by Wizards of the Coast. So even though we can use the name Tiamat, we can't ever present Tiamat as the dragon queen or as a 5-headed dragon, or we would get sued. And so sometimes we'll get content that's very based on people have been playing D&D for 40 years, 50 years, and then they're like, I want to be able to I paid money to put this in the game, and we have to go, no, we can't do that. And either find a way to turn it into the Pathfinder version of that content, or to simply say, hey, I'm sorry, we you have to go back to square one and come up with a new idea. And the other thing too I've noticed is sometimes that content tries to do a lot, and I always come at it from the standpoint of like, how would I run this at the table as a GM? Like if there's a magic item that has like 14 abilities, that that's a nightmare if you're a GM. But if the computer can handle all that for you, then it's not as big of a deal. So a lot of the feedback I've given on some of that stuff has been like, this is really complicated. And almost every time, whoever I'm talking to at Owlcat is like, no, I think it's fine. And I'm like, okay, like it's not breaking our canon. It's not, killing one of our gods or doing something that's going to leave a lasting impression on the game world that then we or others who are playing in that are going to have to deal with. In which case it's usually fine. But you guys are doing some stuff, especially with some of the end game Wrath content that really, fundamentally, depending on what the player does, can have lasting implications on what comes next for the people of Galarian or the multiverse. And eh, so it's not that content is always off the table. It's just it needs to be handled delicately and get a little bit more approval from us. But
And I think the fact that there's multiple choices, like this can happen or this can happen or this can happen, makes it more, because obviously if there's an ending where the world blows up or the ending where the world splits in two, or I'm just making stuff up here, but you can, the version that is correct is the version that the player experiences. And I think the strength of those multiple different types of huge changes you can make compels people to play the game more over and over, I think. And that's a good thing. You want people to really engage with the game a lot.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, one of our main ideas was to somehow bring this tabletop experience to the CRPG, while you can, as a party with the GM and some other people, you can play a bunch of whole different ways and get all these different results. So we could, if we haven't made all these incomes, there's different final incomes, then all this experience could be lost.
Yeah.
I mean, that's you sort of have to anticipate that collaborative storytelling that
Yeah.
With a video game, it has to be written and programmed and voice recorded and everything ahead of time in order to give people that option so that it feels like it came from them. Whereas at the table, if your players do something crazy and out of left field that we at Paizo never thought of, well, luckily you have a GM who can figure out how to arbitrate that and, yeah, I guess you guys do that. And the entire world turns to cheese. Okay. That's how it happened in our campaign. That's not something we're likely to publish in a book because it's way out of left field. But for the CRPG, it's a much more daunting task in many ways than what we have to do publishing the book. We obviously cover a few of the big outcomes of like, hey, here's how this might end. Maybe it ends this other way, but we might provide 2 or 3 of those as opposed to a dozen or more, like you guys do, which is frankly really impressive that you're able to juggle that many plot lines and have them all feel like a satisfying conclusion to, sometimes 100+ hours of gameplay. You don't want to invest that much time and then have it end and go, really? Did any of my choices matter? And that's not the case. So it's good.
Just a fun message from the chat from StrategyMin2 for James. Just a note: I'm a guy who created the Baker created content. Who had baked. I'm sorry, who had the Baker created wondrous figures in Kingmaker and Wrath, and I've been running games in Pathfinder since the Pathfinder tabletop beta test. So he's like a veteran of the game and was with you from the very beginning, I think. So one of the players who are still with us, and if I'm getting this correctly, even a moderator in our chat in Twitch. So yeah, interesting
Cool.
a snippet for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yay.
And
if I could ask a question, did you have other questions you wanted to ask?
no, you can ask
I
questions.
when we took our break, I was just sort of thinking, it was about this time after Kingmaker came out that we first started talking about, okay, what are you guys going to work on next? And we haven't started talking about that with the Owlcat team. So I know that no one here has inside information about it because we haven't talked about it yet. But I'd be curious to know what game everyone here would like to see next. And what the community, what people in the chat want to know, because inevitably that question will come up at a business meeting that I'm in, and so it's a totally self-serving question, but
This question
Wrath is out.
already being asked sometimes. Yeah.
What
So
a
if it were
tricky
completely
way
up
to
to
ask
you-
this question. This question.
Yeah,
God damn it, you are
and
good.
obviously we're not making the decision today in this, and most of the people who are making that decision are not here. Oleg or my boss, or like the people who really need to decide are not here. But if it were completely up to you, what Pathfinder adventure path would come next? We talked about some of the three other ones that were options instead of
Mhm.
Wrath. Would you go back to one of those and do those as game number 3, or something completely new?
Well, chat says most of the time Iron Gods, Skull and Shackles, and then Rise of the Rune Lord. Yes, kind of Skull and Shackles, the most obvious one, and the most come ups most of the time when people think about or maybe fantasize about what kind
Yeah.
of next adventure path we can maybe really tackle in the future. But yeah, for now, no one here has any inside information on what's next, and let's keep it that way for a moment. War of the Crown, yeah. But this is a sneaky question.
Okay, then it was a question
Good for
for
you,
the
Mark.
chat.
Good for you, Mark.
I'll leave it that way so that no one gets in trouble. But
Well, I
okay,
may
okay.
answer the way that won't satisfy anybody. I feel myself more like an observer, or more like maybe a player or reader. I'm always thrilled to see things our team does, and I'm more like, oh, that's beautiful. Please make more. So I'm more like a player here, not a creator in this way. So whatever will come next, I'm really, really curious of what will happen.
Yeah. Okay.
As long as we won't have to balance all these demon lords fight, I'm fine. It's just all those mythics, different options, demon lords,
CR30 encounters. Yeah.
yeah, it's
those
just
are fun.
like what? And then you have to kind of adjust it to every play style. Like it could be some newcomer, let's say, and he's playing a bot, and his party is not that good at fighting, and then there is a demon lord, and just like, good luck.
And Yulia, just a question from the chat for you. What about maybe some mythic abilities in the future to help assassins out? Maybe to their poisons to maybe overcome some resistance of demons, something like that. Because people feel
immunity
like
to poison.
immunities to poison. Because people feel like assassins are not in a great place as of now. Do you have any ideas for this? Maybe any insights for us?
Just, let's say, send it as a suggestion. We might review it. When we will fix bugs, we will.
Yeah, the situation is that we are now, as you all may know, I mean the audience who's watching us right now, we're now fixing the bugs, and we're doing it every day. The whole team is working on it because we, of course, want our game to be in this perfect shape, so everybody will be satisfied, and that's our main goal for now. There could be some possibilities, something being added future DLCs or maybe enhanced edition, but of course we just unable to promise anything right now. But of course, again, you know us, you know our story, the story of Kingmaker. Some things sometimes are added by popular demand, so we probably cannot deny. We cannot say, "Oh no, it will never happen."
Yeah, we just
Let
have to
us
see and
know.
balance it. So you just
Yeah.
send it as a suggestion.
It was what 2 years after launch that turn-based
Yes.
combat came to Kingmaker. I mean, it's not like the game as it currently stands is the be all end all of what Wrath of the Righteous will be. There's still the full season pass worth of DLC to come out, and even additional content that might not even be DLC based, but could just be a patch to a enhanced edition or console version or whatever. So
And
I'll
we're
wait to see it come through my approval box.
And we're still up to provide Steam Workshop tools for modders in future. That's what we already promised, but
Okay, let's discuss all our failures right now.
no, I mean that's it's also.
Sounds like you're volunteering for some work right there.
I just want to give heads up for beautiful mod makers, and even if we don't happen to make some great things you want us to do, it's always possibilities that mod makers will do it, and in future it will be even easier for them.
True. Because they have
And-
freedom to do anything.
Right, it doesn't have to be approved by me for them to do it.
Yeah, even by us.
And I mean, that's one of the cool things too, was that with Kingmaker, some of the mods that people made got incorporated into, I mean, the
turn-based mode.
if not the mod itself, the same functionality. I mean, the turn-based was an incredibly popular mod, which I think informed the decision to add that as a feature of the enhanced edition of the game.
Let
You know,
me
so-
let me take a word for a second. We are being raided by another channel, so let us explain again what we are doing here. Today we have some special guests from Paizo. James is the creative director of Paizo. Mark is the director of brand strategy. And with me there is my colleagues from Owlcat Games, Lisa, who is a community manager too, and Yulia, she's a senior game designer. So you can ask, and I am also a community manager. Yeah, there is also me. And you can ask any questions you want to about the Kingmaker, about Wrath of the Righteous. This is kind of special stream because Wrath of the Righteous is fresh and new and still full of you know what. And Kingmaker is turning 3 years tomorrow, so we have some special interesting stream with the guests. I understand that some
And
of you
of course,
maybe...
we're accepting congratulations for Kingmaker's birthday.
Yep, we are. And if you miss out on maybe the first part of the stream, don't worry. We're gonna record it later and put it on our YouTube channel, so don't worry. Okay, let us continue. Let's talk about game mechanics and how we transferred them in our games. First of all, of course, big game mechanics, not like small ones like feats or skills or abilities. A big, maybe massive ones like your kingdom in a Kingmaker and Mythic paths in Wrath of the Righteous. This question is mostly for now for Yulia and Lisa. Was there any maybe troubles? Maybe we had some difficulties when we tried to bring these mechanics to from tabletop to CRPG, and how have we solved them?
With pain, blood, and tears, obviously.
And burning train.
Yeah. So, like, I don't know. Let's talk about Rust, because I'm a little bit more familiar with the Rust of the Righteous. So let's say we have two major mechanics, two major new mechanics. It was Crusade and the Mythic Pass. So with Crusade, what we actually did before we kind of designed all details is that we had our table talk Tuesday where we played Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. And basically, we kind of had this task for our game masters and all those small groups to test different types of ways to implement Crusade or Mythic Pass. So initially, when we already started playing Adventure Pass, we tried to see how could this fit to the CRPG, what we should change, how it will work. So we kind of tried to emulate CRPG on the table, and yep, that was our main goal. Let's say as Crusade and Kingdom in Kingmaker, both of them are so different to the core CRPG mechanics, so they were worked several times. I think the Kingdom management was worked like 8 times before it reached its final form, and still there's always just like, okay, let's add this. Maybe we should allow to hire the mercenaries, like these advisors for the kingdom management. Similar in the Crusade, initially we had like the main idea was that the units in, let's say, Crusade fighting should be almost one-to-one to what you will meet in the while you're traveling and fighting demons, but then we had to rework it. We had to rebalance the whole magic system in order to add this, like, it should be playable.
And we also decided to add this stretch goal to our Kickstarter campaign and make crusading system like tactical battles,
like a fully big
Heroes
separate system. Yes. Exactly. So without it wouldn't be even possible, because it was such a huge mechanic, and in comparison with Kingdom, it's just like, oh my god, you have this tactical fights, you have those leaders, what do you call them? Generals, yes, with their own fates progression, and that's kind of almost a different game.
You need to level up them as well.
And with Mythic
Yeah, I mean,
Path,
you've already got all your companions that you're building. You've got your own character that you're building. There's a lot of character creation and advancement in the game for people who want it. It's nice that that's something that for those who are overwhelmed by it or just want to play for the story, that you can automate all that. But the level of customizability that the game provides, both in the main, RPG game, but also the sub games and the subsystems, is really a lot of fun.
True. And the Mythic Pass, because initially it was a very interesting idea that you've created, and we just, as we played our tabletop games, because it wasn't just one day, it was like several months, almost, I think almost a year or even longer as we played this. Definitely longer.
I just want to mention to viewers who may be new and don't know us so well that we actually have this tradition in Owlcat that when we start working on the game, we have been through this twice already with Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous. Like the whole team, everybody split into parties and start playing this adventure part. So everybody would know what the setting is, what's happening, how the game feels, what we are doing. So yeah, please go on. I'm sorry.
No. That was a perfect information, additional information. So as we played, we also kind of, all of us had this. Our mythic powers unravel differently, and I'm pretty much sure that Ivo as a dragon was an idea that kind of not burn, sorry, born on our table, where I was just like, I have this mythic powers, and there was. In my case, I was a true neutral character going to the chaotic evil character, and I saw the eggs of Rift Dragon. There was still like usual eggs, and I was just like, I want to get this egg, and I want to wait till it hatch. I want a dragon. So, and with our game master, Alexander Gusev, we actually kind of agreed that I will share half of my mythic powers in order for this dragon to hatch immediately. And as I will gain my mythic powers, half of my mythic powers will go to that dragon, and that's how it will evolve. So,
What class were you playing?
I was playing Bard.
Oh, so not one that normally gets a pet.
No, it was totally
okay.
like this mythic mechanic that I just really wanted a dragon. So just like I need a dragon. So it was a crazy playthrough. So, and a lot of mechanic like this, they will burn on the
At the
behind the
table.
table. Yeah. So we were discussing like I want this, let's do that. And then once we kind of added our flavor to already existing mythic powers, we had to balance them. And that was a
Well,
pain.
it sounds like a lot of the new mechanics you guys did were sort of house rules that you did
Yeah.
during your own playthroughs. That's really I think probably why so many of them feel so organic and fit in so well to the game is that they came out of the stories that you wanted to tell as players and as role players, instead of being, you know, designed from the top down of like, well, we need to make sure that the mythic path has the following things. And I think that that's sort of how mythic was designed from us, because we had to design mythic in parallel to when the adventure path was being developed, because they both came out at the same time. And so uh, I think in many ways the Owlcat version of Mythic feels more organic. It feels like something that came out of playing and gaining these powers and sort of creating like, oh, well, my character's really into undead. Can I get mythic power that's tied to being a lich? And that's not something that we had considered at the time, because we were looking at it from like, okay, what's the bare minimum that this system needs to be able to do? Well, it should, help high charisma characters and high strength characters. And so that's sort of why we went with the ability score uh, chassis that the Mythic was built on, and I think it makes a lot of sense to in play. Your character is far less defined by what ability scores you have than they are by your alignment and just sort of the flavor of your character. And so I think that that's why it works so well in the CRPG, because it was crafted for this story instead of being a system that needed to work.
And we also
for everyone.
wanted to make sure that while we are making these mythics more like alignment, or like how to say, not style, but archetype, but not in terms of mechanics. As archetype, we also needed to make sure that multiple classes could evolve into these mythics. So in the original, if I remember correctly, you are playing like this class, and you then have this limited ability for mythics to select. And we
Well,
will
it wasn't so much that you had limited ability; it's that they were tied to your ability scores. So if you're a bard, it makes sense for you to be for your mythic abilities to be charisma based, because that's the thing you're best at. Whereas by making it more about morality, or more about like planar affiliation, or just sort of the narrative, the hero's journey style mythic stuff that you guys did, it means that if you're a fighter who wants to be a trickster, you can do that. Or if you're a bard, you can do it. And if you're a sorcerer, you can do it. And if you're a cleric, it doesn't matter, because it's all about how you approach the world.
More about feeling.
But in the end, we actually have the similar problem. Well, not the similar problem, but the similar nuances to solve, is that when you go from the idea or the archetype, then you have to kind of create all the mythic abilities. and Mythic fits, and then you're just like, okay, now any person, like any character class, should be able to play this Mythic pass and don't feel like, okay, I don't get anything from it. Like it's totally useless for me. So then the balancing becomes quite an interesting task, let's say, challenging, and that's why we collected a lot of feedback from the players, from internal team, also in terms of okay, who is lacking what, trying to balance, to add, but without losing the flavor to the archetype, to the mythic pass itself.
And let me chime in for a second. James, I have several questions for you, just my personal questions. First of all, were you involved in design of your kingdom in Kingmaker on mechanics, on how you did it, and so on and so on? Were you involved in this? Maybe you did some creative decisions or gameplay decisions with this system.
Yeah, for Kingmaker, a lot of what we were doing in those back then, all of those subsystems were really created by whoever was building the adventure path. So I worked with Wes Schneider at the time to build the kingdom building and all of that stuff. So yeah, that was stuff built together.
Why I'm asking, because when it's just a continuation of the question of how we transferred your mechanics to computer games. When we tried to at first to convert this kingdom into Kingmaker, we thought it was a little bit troublesome for us, because if I'm getting this correctly, you were inspired by games like 4X games, computer games, when you created a kingdom like Civilizations, Sid Meier's, and so on and so on. So that was your main inspiration for creating a kingdom in Kingmaker. Am I right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And how do you think how it went? Does the system work well on a table? Does it like? Do you like how it was implemented, or maybe you have some back thoughts right now?
So the first time that we built the Kingmaker adventure path, yeah, it was very much we were inspired by things like SimCity or Civilization, stuff like that, where you wanted to like kind of build this sort of kingdom from the ground up in a more kind of modular sense. And I think it worked pretty well. I mean, it was a very popular adventure path, so it worked well. We went back and revised it for Ultimate Campaign and expanded on it. But really, this is a unique situation because it's something that we added to the game, and then you guys built used that as a starting point for the video game version. And I think honestly, I think the video game version works better than the original version because it's a lot of new stuff to learn, and it's since it was inspired by computer games, I think it works better there because there's so much behind the scenes mechanics going on. It's a lot to keep track of, and if the computer keeps track of it, the player can focus more on the story of it. And then it's all the way back to us now because we're about to finish work on the hardcover second edition Pathfinder version of Kingmaker, which took a lot, like hundreds of pages of new content inspired by what you did with the computer game side of things. And one of those was the kingdom building stuff, which it's a new game, but so we had to restart that whole system, and now it's a lot more like building a character than building sort of this kind of weird separate side. If you know how to build a character in second edition Pathfinder, you know how to build a kingdom in second edition Kingmaker. But there was a lot of stuff like the roles of your counselor and treasurer and all of that, and just how events play out. That I think really it has a huge advantage because of the expansions and refinements that you did on Kingmaker. So yeah, I think it worked out really, really well.
Okay, and what about Wrath of the Righteous and Mythic Paths? You said you're in the middle of the fourth chapter, right? Right now.
Yes.
And with what Mythic Paths you went with?
Azada, the dragon.
Yeah.
Pet dragon
And
path.
do you like mechanics of Azad in a gameplay sense? understand that everyone loves Ivu and your little island, but what about mechanics, about gameplay stuff? Do you like what we did with Azata, for example?
I like it a lot. The tricky thing when we were doing Wrath of the Righteous is, like Mark was saying, the adventure path was something that I was running on like room
Mhm.
1, and then the mythic rules were happening in room 2, and they were going at the same time. And there was a little bit of back and forth, but I don't think that it really worked as well as it should have. And I think for me, the part that was the most frustrating was that the mythic rules were sort of world neutral. They didn't really delve into a specific world. We focused on, like Mark was saying, the ability scores and these kind of sort of classic types of heroes like Hierophants and Archmages. And but I think from a storytelling side of points, that feels sort of bland to me personally. And the way that you've brought in demons and tricksters, and some stuff from Pathfinder like Azatas, but some stuff that is like more like the legend path or the trickster path, that are more kind of they're still deeply involved in the setting, but it feels more organic. It feels like it belongs as part of the story rather than something that is kind of fighting against the story. We did a lot of playtesting of the mythic rules, but by the nature of the playtesting, we generally get more feedback and more work on the lower level side of things. So I don't think we did nearly enough work on studying how mythic rules and really high level content dovetail together. And
Because
as
first
a result,
edition
I think
high
the
level
last edition,
content was problematic to begin with.
yeah, it just didn't. It got overpowering and overwhelming. Too much going on, and it detracted from the storyline. And I think the great success of what you've done with this version is it doesn't detract from the storyline when you get these powers. It creates the storyline, which is, I think, it's really, really fun. I know that I just got my last night playing until like 2 in the morning last night, and I just got my, I think, 5th or 6th tier mythic powers, and I was like, well, I can pick my powers now, but that'll take another half hour. I can go to bed and I ended up staying up an extra half hour second stuff. Yeah, it was really good. I
One
love it.
thing one thing that the mythic implementation in the computer game can do that we couldn't do at the table is that when you're playing the game at a table with other people, you have 4 or more characters who
Yeah,
each
yeah,
have
yeah.
their own mythic abilities and their own mythic path. And the thing um about mythic storytelling, like when you think of actual real world myths, they're often a single person. It's not like Hercules and his 3 buddies who were as powerful as Hercules. It's the one person who is doing the mythic stuff. And sure, there's other characters and other people who are along with them. And the computer game, because it's a single player experience, allows you to focus on that one mythic story, that one narrative arc. That when you've got 4 people or more at the table who are each trying to tell their own mythic tale, there's a lot of toe stepping. You're constantly, even more so than normal, trying to get the spotlight. And, if your character is a mythic trickster, and everyone else is not a trickster, the story itself is not going to involve as many opportunities for you to be mythically tricky. And so I think that the fact that that each of your companions is not taking a mythic path, and it's not like you're the Azata and Sela is the angel, and um, Ember is the legend, or whatever it
And
ends
then
up
they
being.
all fight each other who will be a commander.
Exactly. And I think that it's just sort of a perfect storm of elements that make this game work. In that regard, is that I think that mythic storytelling lends itself to having a protagonist instead of a party of protagonists. And that's the experience that the computer game provides.
And what about you, Mark? I think you have a good knowing about Mythic paths because you approved them and you already played. You already played in second chapter, so I think you
Yeah.
saw most of them in terms of getting access to. What do you want to
I
went
think
with
so. I
maybe
mean,
in the future?
I'm playing a really traditional, lawful good playthrough. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the Mythic Path stuff was locked off from me to begin with. Like I'm sure I'm not even seeing a lot of the, Lich or Worm that Walks stuff, because
Mm-hmm.
those are just not even a realm of possibility. But yeah, I mean, I think that. I think it's worked out really well. Like I said, I'm playing through. It looks like I'm going to go Angel um, on it. I think pretty hardcore. So
The interesting thing that still, if you only go by this mythic paths and don't see any other options for your current playthrough, you still can play your angel differently.
oh yeah,
You may
yeah, for
go
sure.
separate paths inside this path.
And a question, like mechanical question from the chat. Why do we and Paizo went with the decision to make Aeon a lawful neutral, not a true neutral like he was in first edition of the game? Is there any particular reason for this, or maybe it lost in the ages?
So one of the things that we wanted to do with our game is to make it our game and not. I talked a little bit a while back about how some stuff is Wizards of the Coast, is Dungeons and Dragons. Um, for the I guess the outsider races like demons and angels, a lot of these things are from mythology, and so they're like things that anybody can draw lore from. Other ones are things that we made up, like based somewhat on mythology, but like psychopomps and proteans and azatas. We never really had that with lawful neutral. In first edition, the category we had were inevitables, and that is something that is 100% made up by D&D. We can use it, and
Mm-hmm.
you guys can use it in your game. It's open content, but it's not something that we built from the ground up, whereas the idea of Aeons is. And so when we switched over to second edition, we wanted to have in the lawful neutral category, we wanted something that was something we were proud of that we created. And that was basically either we make up something brand new, which didn't really sit well because we wanted to have some built-in gravity to the setting. And the role the psychopomps played as like kind of shepherds of the dead was so strong and visually appealing that we thought that they covered neutral perfectly. And so Aeons, we said, well, we never really figured out what their role is, and let's shift them over to lawful neutral and make them sort of the exemplars for lawful neutral in second edition. And for me personally, the idea of balance, traditionally, I guess in D&D, the whole idea of balance is like that's like the neutral path where everything has to be balanced and equal. But I've never really felt that way. I've always felt like if something is perfectly balanced, everything is in a perfect lawful state where nothing changes, everything is balanced. And the opposition of balance is just entropy and change and just chaos. So I feel like the whole role that Aeons play, where it's like they personify two things in balance, whether it's life and death, or creation and destruction, or time and space. They're two different things that they kind of make sure is always balanced and always following the laws of the metaverse. It just felt more accurate to me to have them be lawful neutral. So I mean, that's something. It's one of the things that when we do changes to the game, there's inevitably going to be people that prefer the original version of the lore, and that's still out there. If you prefer Aeons and your homebrew game to be neutral, you can still do that by the same extension. If you prefer, devils to be chaotic evil, you can make that change too. But we have to make the change that's right for our setting and something that we are personally passionate about. I'm personally much more interested in exploring what Aeons do rather than exploring like inevitable stuff, which is not really something we can do easily in novels or things that aren't game products. So That's the basic reason why we changed Aeons over to lawful neutral. Is we like them better than inevitables, I guess.
Okay, and a
Well,
question
or
for
regardless
Yulia.
of what we like, we don't
okay.
own inevitables, so.
Yeah. Very important remark, and it's truly important. And a question for Yulia. How hard it was to implement some of the weirder items like beast modes? If you maybe did something with that or had some experience with that on Pathfinder, or Kingmaker, or Wrath of the Righteous.
Very painful for the whole team, for the coders as well. No one expected it to be as tricky as it is actually. So yeah,
And
I think that answers
why
the
it was
question.
tricky? What? Or you don't want to continue asking answering
Well,
this question?
because it's more like a technical. It's just like the whole engine. It's more like the engine. We weren't prepared. So and then we're just like, okay. And the tricky part with it that, like with all content, that at the first glance, it's kind of it works. It works fine. And even our QA checks it. It works more or less fine. You then fix some bugs, and then the player starts playing, and then just like it just
always keep finding something nobody here at the team would ever imagine could happen in the game.
yeah, and they're just like
Uh,
That's why we
okay.
run public playtests of all of our new classes and rule systems. Because as smart and experienced as all of us are, all it takes is, one player to go, what about this thing? And then everyone goes,
True.
"Well,
And
no."
in terms of computer games, there are always also always some little things that just can be reproduced in this particular computer,
Oh
for
yeah.
this particular player, this one time in life, and this person is lucky enough to get this. And we would never find it ourselves. So that's why we usually need to ask the save game file, because we won't be able to find it anywhere.
And a tricky question for Mark and James. You asked a tricky question to us, and we will remember this. So, tricky question to you: any chances of Paizo doing the same thing they did with Kingmaker, recreating the AP with Pathfinder 2 second edition rules of Wrath of the Righteous? So, simply Wrath of the Righteous second edition when?
I'll answer that because I think it's going to break James. James has been working, 40 plus hour weeks for almost 2 years on the Kingmaker second edition stuff. It's a massive undertaking, and it's not like we're not publishing our other content. So it's largely been a one person ordeal. That I'm not kidding when I say that it has nearly broken James. Possibly it has broken James, and this is just a facade that he's putting on for appearances. When really he's just crying in the fetal position. So I think that it's certainly something that we might do. The crowdfunding effort for it was very successful. I think that there's value to building on the popularity that the computer game has. I mean, we have a lot of people who have bought our books, but I would be shocked if we had sold as many copies of our core rulebook as you guys have sold copies of Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous. Um, so it makes sense from a business standpoint for us to do that, but we have to figure out how to do it in a way that doesn't come with a whole lot of delays or production hurdles that cause more problems internally than people will ever see. So I think we may do something with it, but it's not currently on the schedule right now. Kingmaker is our top priority, and we're still in the process of finalizing those books. So we have to do that first. Then we've got a Abomination Vaults hardcover compilation. That was the fourth second edition adventure path. It's a 3-volume AP that we'll be putting out as a hardcover next year. After that, we don't have anything else on the schedule that we've announced. So
yeah, I've certainly got a lot of feedback on the process of I think the end result that we've got from Kingmaker is going to be, a lot of people are going to love it, and the content that was inspired by the Owlcat side of things. We've got an entire book just basically about the companions, for example. I think people are going to love it, and I think the demand and the expectation and the hope for a Wrath of the Righteous version will be out there, because I personally like Wrath of the Righteous. I think Wrath of the Righteous is more fun for me. It just might be I like the storyline better, but it's just whether or not we do something like this. Well, certainly I will advise management not to attempt this at the same time we are launching a new edition, for example. That was maybe not
wouldn't be a problem. Third edition is not coming on the horizon.
Definitely, it's something that we are aware of is going to be expected, and hopefully.
So, yeah.
I mean, I would love one of my greatest disappointments with Wrath of the Righteous. It was a storyline that I really, really wanted to get out there, and one of my greatest disappointments is just how the mythic and the high level content, which is what it's all about, going to the abyss and fighting demon lords, was disappointing to a lot of people. And I think that the computer game is for me personally, it's fixed a lot of that stuff. It's made that an attraction rather than something to be afraid of. And I would love to reapproach Wrath of the Righteous from the tabletop side in sort of in the style that you've trailblazed with this, with it making it, more in line with the world. And but that's an entire new system of rules that's going to require more than just one person. So it's going to be an all hands on deck sort of situation if and when we tackle it. And it's going to take years. So
fingers crossed, we're waiting for that.
Yay.
And I'm kind of sorry for asking these questions. Sorry, this question, because I hope you are well, James. Like I really do. Okay.
I mean, it's also it's like the whole pandemic thing and everything. It's not just Kingmaker. It's been a tough time for everybody. So
yeah, it was a tough year, a tough 2 years almost.
Yeah.
To be honest, I run out of questions. So maybe you guys from Paizo have some questions to us. We will glad to answer them. Maybe Lisa and Yulia have some questions, or chat. Let us have another maybe 10-15 minutes at answering questions to each other, and then we will slowly round this thing up, if you don't mind. Okay?
Cool.
Yep.
Okay, maybe any questions from you guys to us, or maybe from Lisa and Yulia? Oh, I was the only one who came up prepared.
You are. Let's talk to the chat.
God damn it.
They have quite a lot to say. Usually.
Well, I am trying to ignore the Starfinder questions as hard as I can. So, what else do we have in the chat? Well, they talked about romances, of course. They asked Lisa to reinforce Voljiv romance looking straight into camera.
Reinforce? Yes.
Yeah, to say this is a valid romance, and we will maybe do something like this in the future.
I just know that during my last stream this Wednesday, some of the members of the community have created a petition on change.org. so we finally make Woljiv's romance real. I just may say once again what I usually say for these things. I myself would love if Woljiv would have a romance. Of course, we cannot we cannot promise anything. But just as we already discussed today, there is a possibility we might reconsider some of the choices or want to add something if we really see many people on that. This is a high demand. So hopefully.
I have a question on that topic, because I'm not really involved in the beyond the approval of general outlines. I guess this is probably a question for Yulia. How much is it different creating a romance plot line than creating a different character story arc? Technically, I mean, does it require more work? Is it just a different type of story? I mean, what goes into the process of deciding how many romances there's going to be and who they're going to be?
So I think the best person to answer this question is not in this room because it's all
I
about
can answer that.
But I would say, as with any, because I think romances, and not everyone likes romances. I know people who don't play who play games without any romance. So it is a lot of content that a person can skip.
I think that every
Yes,
time I
but
play like one of those sports games, I'm like, why can't I romance any of these people?
we unfortunately we all would love to add an eternal number of romances, and I know each of the narrative designers would like to. We would love to
different
make
versions of romances, please.
yeah. But yeah, we always have this limit for these romantic options because each romantic option adds a whole new huge layer of narrative content. There are some there is a whole quest line for a romantic option. Uh, Sometimes new new locations, lots of new dialogues, and
Even items like
it's a whole new big quest line for each of the romantic option characters. And we already have lots of dialects and lots of words, lots of text in our games. So it's always painful process. We need to select something and cut something out.
Oh yes.
So yeah.
Not an easy decision. Not an easy decision.
Yeah, mostly things about romances are decided by narrative designers. Unfortunately, today they're quite busy, and Yulia is more a game designer. She worked on things like mechanics, yeah, those little things.
Boring stuff.
No, the great
You
stuff.
just decide what size the bonus is that you get to charisma if you romance a certain person, as
Exactly.
opposed to figuring out whether you can romance them in the first place.
That's why when we talked about romances, the first things she mentioned was it's in new locations, new items. God damn it! And I was forced to work on it, something like that. But yeah, it's mostly decided on by narrative designers, and we can't really say some good or interesting things about that.
We usually want to have some balance, so we make sure different players with different playing styles and different characters, tastes, characters, role and roles in terms of role playing as well, would have someone to select. And it is also always quite a difficult balance we try to keep because we cannot just assign a role. You'll be we need to make sure that we actually this character can be a romance and can would be interested and have this romance space. So we cannot just assign. We always look at the character
Story.
and
Yeah.
his or her story, and then decide some details about it.
Yeah, I talked about it with one of our narrative designers when I had some questions. And she said that there is one main rule for this type of thing. They first write a character, the whole arc of the character, everything they have in mind for him. Then they write every single character in the game. And then they look at the cast and think, okay, this guy could be romanceable because of his narrative, because he is a like aristocrat. He is I don't know, a drunk alcoholic,
Playful.
so they're playful and so on. So this could be an interesting romance. Okay, this girl, she wants to eat people. I think this is gonna be a nice romance. Let's add 2 of these to our game. So and so and so on.
And people sometimes
we do still
ask,
want this to be approved for people to play. There are still rating systems, so we can't go too deep into the romance with the person who wants to eat people.
Well,
people
you
sometimes
know,
ask me, what about romancing Karim or what about romancing Regal? I hardly can imagine these characters actually would be into these relationships in these situations.
Yeah, I mean, it's
and
like
this would be true to their characters.
in real life, there are people who are not interested in a romantic relationship, and that same that same preference is exhibited in our characters. Or you have
Like-
someone like Ekundayo, like he could probably be romanced, but his whole story is about his family being, killed by trolls. Like he's not he's not on Tinder right now, he's mourning for like the entire game.
And that's
so
his plot storyline.
yeah, so it would feel really weird for you just to be like, "Hey, buddy, I gave you some flowers. You wanna you wanna get over your wife already? Come on, let's go."
God damn it.
That just
And
it
it's hard
wouldn't
to
feel
me,
right.
to imagine what should you actually do, how should you behave. So Regal could probably think of you as a romantic interest. What should you possibly do?
I think people from our community have a thought or 2 about this, but let's not open this theme.
Again, we all have our head canons.
It's a dangerous place to be.
Perfectly normal.
Okay. What else? In chat people talk about women who like to eat people. Nice. It was a good praise from me. And I don't think. What I wanted to say? Yeah, people want us to make infinite possibilities with romances, so there is a good and long-running joke in the studio that our next game should be something like date scene with every single character from our previous games and maybe from other adventure paths from Pathfinder universe. So if you have any ideas, James and Mark, shoot us.
And
What kind of characters you want to add?
Any question which sounds like, why cannot you make Eternal put their romances, portraits, a number of portraits, number of classes.
Everything has a trade-off, and you have to decide what you want to spend your resources on, and it seems like how many romances are there in the game now? There's 5, 6.
Let me think. 1, 2, 3,
Don't
kinda.
forget the Queen.
4, yeah, right, 4.
Right, yeah. So
and this is
there's
only girls, 4 girls, I think, and
okay. So I'm seeing in the chat that there's 7 officially. So
7.
7 is
1, 2.
7 is
Yeah,
not
7.
not a small
and
number.
Strategemini
I've never
says
had
9
7
plus.
romantic prospects at any given time, so that's a big number to me.
There are also some like intrigue opportunities. That's not like
yeah.
So if you count them, there will be more. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like if we were to add one more, but that meant that there was less likelihood of getting an additional class or mythic path. Like, is that trade-off worth it? And I think that's the balance that you always have to strike when you're making a game, whether it's because you have limited page count in a printed book or because you only have so many programmers and narrative folks who are able to generate new content.
For narrative reasons, it's nice you mentioned this, but there is one mythic path that can't even romance people in his later stages. Lich, after his final transformation, abandoning every single romance option, whatever he had previously, because, well, now it's just a bunch of bones. It's hard to. Well, this is a good play of words,
And
but I
there
will
is a
not say
swarm
it.
who just eats everybody.
Yeah, there is a swarm. Yeah, there is this. It's hard to have some romance with a swarm.
But I, right from the start of Wrath of the Righteous development, had this head canon that the swarm that walks just romances itself.
Jesus God! What?
Hello. Ooh.
Because there are many of them.
Okay. Okay. Jesus Christ.
That
Okay.
makes sense. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, they are evil. I mean, and we've always sort of said that evil is all about selfishness. It's about putting yourself above all others, no matter what suffering that causes on everyone else. It's about you, and so the swarm that walks really is like the ultimate narcissist character. They'll just mindlessly go over and destroy whatever. So it makes sense that, yeah, they would not be interested in romancing anyone but themselves. And luckily they are composed of thousands of individual beings to,
that's
hang
the
out with.
idea.
It's always a good indicator that a group of people are like bonding and starting to like each other when people just started to be horny on main Twitch channel. So yeah, if we are comfortable with this, I think we are good and became a kind of maybe not a long life friends, but kind of friends. But
only if you subscribe to our channel.
Yep. And now I'm just fearing of the I don't know, moderators of Twitch chat, Twitch coming to us and banning us for being like extremely horny on our main channel. So let us round this thing up. Let us say goodbye to our viewers. Thank you for coming to us today. It was nice to talk with you, and it was a great pleasure to talk with you, James and Mark. Thank you again for coming today.
Thank you for a great conversation.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's
And-
always great to be here. I say every time we should do this more often, and then we don't. But
it's just
everyone's busy.
Yep.
We'll send you
Thank
a
you for having us. It's always fun.
Thank you.
It's just in real life and friends. Yeah, let's grab a beer next week, and you'll never talk for 2 years after that. Something
Yeah,
like that, I
exactly,
think,
yeah.
happening.
What if we have some beer during the next stream?
And we will never talk for another 2 years.
It is not nighttime here. I will have you know. So while it is fine for you guys to have a beer on a Friday night at 10 o'clock, it is less so for us to do so at noon while we're at work.
Well, it's a Friday. I think. Okay.
No,
This is too much.
got that going for us. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you again for coming. Thank you for Lisa and Yulia to coming too. It was a great pleasure to talk with you. And first of all, thank you all of our viewers to coming to us, to trolling us, to asking your questions, and just laughing with us and having fun. I hope you had some fun, because we almost certainly did. And goodbye.
Bye.